I'm not sure. Am I audible?
You are
Very audible.
Yeah, okay. But I can't, when I switch the video on, I see Honorable Mafanya. What's wrong? Are you hacking my system?
Is it? No, probably, I've grown up with science issues, technology. If you see me, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Technology or witchcraft? I don't know. One.
Yeah, one of them.
Probably it's his witchcraft on his side, but with me it's technology. He's bewitched. Thank you.
Dr. Willem, what should we do, because the chair will join later?
Yes, Woodley, we can start the program. I just spoke to him. He said he will be in very shortly. He just asked that we, in the interest of time, commence with the meeting. So perhaps if you can go through the program for the night, we can take apologies, and then the department could start their presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Willem. Colleagues, we'll just open the meeting. The chair will take over as soon as he joins the meeting. Today's Joint Standing Committee will be receiving a briefing by the South African Military Health Services on the challenges with regard to the provision of medical services in all of their military health facilities, including patient load and cost of outsourcing in that regard. So we basically have one item. With that said, colleagues, I declare this meeting officially open and welcome all of you in this meeting. We now move to item number 2, which is apologies. Do we have any apology? The first apology we are noting, colleagues, honorable members, is the one from the co-chair, Honorable Cyril Kaba, who indicated that I think he's still traveling to the village. He will join the meeting soon and take over.
Chair, there's only one other apology at this stage. It is from the Deputy Minister's office for the Deputy Minister, who is not available tonight.
Thank you. Those are the 2 apologies received. Can we then move to the next agenda item? I'm not sure. Is the minister in the meeting?
Yes, she is, Chair.
Honorable Minister, can I give you an opportunity to introduce the team you are with, as well as your remarks in terms of tabling the item?
Chair, good evening. Okay, good evening, Chair. We're struggling a little bit in the building, can't network. So I think that Chair knows that the problems at SAMHS have been in the open, not just this year, in the last couple of years. We are with SecDev, and we are with the, sure that Chief SAMHS is here in the Mapaha. So I would simply say that we should go straight to handing over to him, Chair, to make that presentation. I don't know about you, but me, have had a very long day. So the energy levels are not at their best. And this is a very important one because it deals with the health of the people who look after us. So that would be my way of remarks, Chair, that we are here and we are ready. SecDef, I hope that you have made sure that Dajema Paha is on board because I can see him.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. He is here with a team. I think I've seen more than 3 people from the SAMHS environment, led by Surgeon General. So I think they are ready.
All right. Thank you very much, SecDef Minister. Yeah, let's hand over to the SG to present the item, and SG, you may equally introduce the team that you are with. Over to you, SG.
Thank you, Chairperson of the committee. Thank you, Minister, the SecDef. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, I've got a few members from the SAMHS. It's myself, the Surgeon General. I have a Director Planning, Brigadier General Langa. I also have Director Nursing, Brigadier General Maso, as well as the General Officer Commanding of one military hospital is here with us. Those are the people that I could see on the line here. There could be others. We are going to present in trying to provide information as requested. General Langa, Director Planning, will present. In our presentation, we'll look at all the elements that form a complete health system, the SAMHS. Here we'll provide the infrastructure, which compose of facilities as well as equipment. And then we will discuss the issue of personnel, which is composed of healthcare practitioners within the SAMHS as well as the support personnel. And then we will together all these factors, the elements that I've just described, the common element in terms of the success of this is actually the budget. All of them depend on the budget. So without wasting time, I will give General Langa an opportunity to load the presentation and present, and then we can have discussions after that. General Langa, I hand you over so you can start the presentation. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, SG. To the Minister, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, members of the Defense Force, colleagues, good evening. Can I just confirm that my presentation is visible?
Yes, it is visible. I can see it. I'm sure.
It's still loading.
I can see it from my side.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's on the screen.
Is it screen? Thank you very much. Once again, to the Minister, thank you, SG, to the Minister, members of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, and General Kobi colleagues, good evening. I'm Brigadier General Langa. I'm going to be taking you through the presentation on the challenges that we experience in the SAMHS in as far as the provision of medical services and our military facilities are concerned. And that we'll also touch on the issue of patient load in the SAMHS, as well as the challenges regarding the matter of outsourcing. The aim obviously, as I mentioned, is to brief the Joint Standing Committee for our challenges in the SAMHS in as far as the provision of services are concerned. That is our scope. In terms of the background, I should perhaps, as a sort of giving context to say, in terms of the mandate, we have got two outputs. Output one relates to what we call force health protection, and that has to do with the support that we provide to deploying forces to those people in the DRC and Mozambique, as well as in our borders. Currently in the SAMHS, we've got 5 medical battalion groups that are responsible for providing support to what we call combat groups, and that talks to the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. 2 of them are regular force, the other 3 are reserve force units. The output 2 talks to what we call force health sustainment, and that has to do with the base-oriented support or family support, and it talks to the 194,000 beneficiaries of the health services. As I mentioned, we're responsible for providing support to active members of the SNDF and the dependents, and that total about 194,000. We also provide support to military veterans, the presidency, all head of states visiting the country, that is our foreign dignitaries, and our client there is basically DIRCO, as well as what you call approved clientele. In terms of the patient population, as reflected in the health information system of the SAMHS, we currently have got 194,530 beneficiaries that talk to the active members of the SNDF, their dependents, as well as the military veterans. In addition to that, we also require to provide support to deployment, as I've mentioned. Those people in DRC, we're responsible for their support. Those in Mozambique as part of Vikela, we provide operational health support. Those that are mainly the N1 and 2 currently as part of Chariot, we're providing support there, as well as those people that are deployed in borderline, in Corona as part of borderline control. There are also medics who are responsible for their health well-being. Other eligible for healthcare provided by the SAMHS or other beneficiaries that are eligible for services provided by the SAMHS includes, as I mentioned, the president of the country, the deputy president, the heads of states that are visiting the country, as well as government departments. And specifically, if I can give an example, we're currently providing support to the SAPS recruits, about 3,000 of them, who are undergoing training in Tresai in Kimberley. The support to other government departments supposed to be done against payment, and we're expecting that we'll be getting payment out of this service that we provide into the SAPS. Many of the challenges, as SG alluded to, emanate from the issues of funding, the budget, obviously, and those issues talk to the challenges in the HR as far as the imbalance of the structure is concerned. The issues of equipment, we're dealing with equipment that are very old, that are not serviceable, which create a bit of challenges for us as people that are providing health services. And there's also the challenge of facilities that are of very poor standard. And those are really costing us a lot of money because services have to be outsourced. If we look at the challenges with regard to budget, I'm just gonna read the first sentence so that I can just at least try to emphasize here. The Defense Act, Chapter 15, talks about the SAMHS that has to be structured and funded at all cost, at state cost, to provide an all-inclusive multidisciplinary health capability to the SNDF and its members, provided that that cost of service to serving members shall be the liability of the state. And that's where the challenge is. And from where we're sitting at the SAMHS, we're saying, in terms of that mandate and requirement from Chapter 15, we are actually executing the mandate. The challenges has to do with the resources, funding that is increasing every year, year in, year out, funding get decreased, and that really makes it a bit of a challenge for us to be able to provide all-inclusive, multidisciplinary services to our members. If I may give an example, current financial year, for us to be able to run the SAMHS, we requested about 9.6 billion. The allocation was about 5.5, which gave us an underfunding of about 4.5, which means we 46.8% short of what we required for us to be able to provide the all-inclusive multidisciplinary health capability. And we're also saying in terms of this budget, whatever is being allocated to us doesn't take into account a number of factors. The issue of medical inflation, which is quite high. Budget that is get allocated to the SAMHS doesn't take that into account. The cost of healthcare services, which is quite expensive, is not being taken into account. The increase in patient load is not taken into account because remember, a decrease in the SNDF HR headcount does not necessarily translate to a decrease in patient load. For example, if we're going to have to give 3,000 people MEM this year out of the Defense Force, those 3,000 will still have to be carried by the Defense Force, by the SAMHS, until their retirement, until in fact they pass on. So the fact that people are going to be leaving the organization or we're going to be reducing headcount in terms of HR, for the SAMHS, it doesn't make a difference because those people must be carried against the SAMHS, against the provision of services. There's also a challenge in that the allocation doesn't take into account the subsidization of the regular force medical continuation fund. Remember, when these people retire, they still have to consult at the sick bay. And that costs us a lot of money because we're not funded for that. We're also saying the allocation doesn't take into account the disease profile. 20 years ago, it was easy with what we allocated. Today, we're talking with cancer. That requires a lot of money. For one patient, it costs up to 4 million to get him treated on oncology, cancer. Those things are not taken into account. We're saying the allocation to the SAMHS doesn't take into account the DoD footprint. We see more and more operations coming on board. That requires resources. That requires personnel. And we're saying there's also the issue of emergence of new medicines as well as medical technology. That needs to be taken into account. More so because most of our main medical equipment for the hospitals are bought overseas. And there is the issue of exchange rate. So whatever money you got, you want to buy an X-ray, is get eaten by the exchange rate and so forth. So the allocation that is made to the SAMHS needs to take those issues into account. And lastly, we're saying the health profile of the patient is not being taken into account because as more people become older, they become more expensive to maintain. Those in retirement have got a lot of multiple issues that SAMHS needs to take care of. So it's actually quite expensive to maintain them. And we're saying what we have been allocated doesn't take these factors into account. If we look at the issue of the structure, there are a lot of anomalies there that's really making it difficult for us to be able to provide the required services. I'll give you an example. In 2000, when the SAMHS structure was approved as part of the Deloitte and Touche engineering, the SAMHS structure was approved at 10,700 at the cost of employee of 6.2 billion in today's terms. National Treasury placed a ceiling on the HR headcount, and we now required to only operate at 6,612 at a cost of employee ceiling of 3.7, which means we're currently sitting with a deficit of 4,136 posts for us to be able to run the SAMHS. The 10,000 was in 2000. 20 years down the line, the structure of the SAMHS has been decreased by about 42%, which really makes it very, very difficult. We're currently operating at 62% of our approved structure. For a patient load that has increased by a third, that is really very, very difficult. That, as I say, from 2000, we saw an increase of a third of the patient load to the SAMHS, which needs to be taken into account when we look at the issue of the structure. We're also saying the structure, the current structure is not proportionate to the level of expected provision of service. We're required to do joint force employment. Joint force employment talks to the operations. We're required to support operations. We're required to provide Army, Navy, and the Air Force when they do exercises, when they do preparation, when they do fitness tests, a medic must be there. We also required to provide personnel for the 99 sick bays or clinics in the SAMHS and the hospitals and the 3 hospitals. That requires personnel. And for all of these requirements, we've got only about 6,000 personnel that's supposed to provide this kind of services. Additional to that, in terms of support to the operation, the SAMHS doesn't have fully fledged structure. We don't have a structure like the Army that has got 2 sides that is responsible only for the operation. In the SAMHS, we don't have such a structure. When there is a requirement for us to deploy, we have to draw personnel from the sick base, from the clinics, and from the hospital to go to DRC, to go to Mozambique. So we don't have a nurse that is sitting somewhere waiting to go to Mozambique and DRC next year. That nurse is working in 1 mil. When there is a requirement for DRC, we draw him out of 1 mil, we send him to Mozambique, we send him to DRC. And obviously, when you draw resources from the hospital, that is going to create gaps. And that's what we're experiencing. Capabilities are only grouped as and when they are required. In other words, if we got to go to Mozambique, we'll have to go to 1 mil, draw doctors, draw nurses, go to 2 mil, go to the sick bay, so that we're able to mobilize and form a group or a capability that will be able to go and deploy. And that in itself is a challenge. Again, in terms of the structure, we're saying we don't have a structure that is capable to run the hospitals at the required level of service provision. For example, under normal circumstances, your military hospital will run on a shift system so that you're able to maintain the hospital for 24-hour basis. We don't have that capacity because we don't have enough warm bodies. So you're 1 mil, you're 2 mil, and 3 mil, we're not able to run a shift system. So people have to work overtime, long overtime, so that at least we can keep the hospital operating for 24 hours, which creates its own dynamics. We've got 88 clinics in the SAMHS nationally. That requires to be manned on a 24-hour basis so that you don't have to resource. So if you open the clinic from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, you're obviously going to have a challenge after hours because people are going to get sick and you'll have to find a way to assist them. Additionally to that, we also support the presidency, as I mentioned, the foreign dignitaries and so forth. We don't have a structure for presidency. Again, resources must be drawn from the hospitals and the clinics to be able to support the presidency. Because we don't have a structure, these services to the presidency and others is not funded. It's not funded. As I mentioned, we'll have to draw resources from 1 mil, from 3 mil, from the clinic, which creates its own challenges in those clinics. There's a challenge of specialists. I mentioned that the current structure was created in 2000, the year 2000. We didn't have a problem with cancer in 2000, so the dynamics have changed. So what we need today is a new type of skill set of specialists that will be able to deal with problems today. As a result, because we've got a shortage of specialists, then we resort to outsourcing. For example, the issue of cancer, because we don't have capacity and capability in the defense force. There is also a challenge with a shortage of our paramedics that are the backbone of support to the operation. Because of the changes in the realignment of training 2024, we have not been able to train in the defense to be able to supplement the attrition and those who are leaving. So there is a challenge there in terms of people that are supposed to go to Mozambique and DRC, as well as borderline, to be able to support the combat elements that are deployed there. There's also a challenge again with the issue of overtime, as I mentioned, because we don't have enough capacity. We have to keep the doctors and nurses for long hours in the hospital and pay them overtime so that at least we can maintain the hospital for 24 hours. That creates its own problem because the current 30% that we're paying is not sufficient because they have to stay long out in hospital. To that end, we've requested authority from minister to be able to allow us at least to pay up to 40% so that at least we can run the hospital on a 24-hour basis. Again, on the issue of HRS I mentioned, we plan on the basis that we should be able, on a routine basis and without overstretching personnel, to carry out a number of concurrent military operations of different scale and effort. But as you will be aware, we have been seeing a number of operations. We have seen an increase in the number of operations. We saw last year with the looting where Army deployed 16 combat units. That required SAMHS to support them. And those are the sort of challenges because if Army deploys 16, they can't deploy without the medical support. Again, that means you'll have to draw resources from the hospital and from the sick bay to be able to support those operations. I'll give the example of Mistral that we support in the DRC. There's also the Op Vikela in Mozambique. There's Op Prosper. example of last year, where, as I mentioned, Army deployed 16 combat units to quell the unrest in the country. There's also the issue of borderline control, where we provide support, and there's the op chariot, the current operation that is around the N3 and N2 operation. The medics are also in support of that operation. And because we're saying this frequency and the concurrency of operation, it means that our people are not having enough time to rest when they come back from operation. If I give you the example of the Army, they will go to the operation, they'll come back for the next 2 years, they will rest, they will train and all that. We don't have that luxury. People come back from DRC, they stay for 2 months, they must go to Mozambique. They come back from Mozambique for 2 months, they must go to borderline control because we simply don't have capacity. So that makes it difficult for us to be able to bring our people back, get them to rest, prepare them again so that they can prepare for the next operation. We just simply don't have that kind of luxury because of the shortage of personnel. In terms of equipment, this is a result of years of non-investment for the hospitals specifically. The equipment is very old that we use in the hospitals. The ambulances are quite old. And most of the equipment are retained beyond their retirement dates. The ambulances on average, we've got 12 years on average ambulance. That really is not acceptable. And this in a way lowers the operational status of the equipment. If we need the ambulances to be at a certain level of combat readiness, we're not able to do because of the challenges with serviceability and obsolescence. In terms of the main medical equipment are those big ticket items in the hospitals, where X-ray and so forth. There's a challenge there with old equipment because if you use this old equipment, then you increase the risk of malfunction while you're doing important procedure. You're sitting in a theater, the operation malfunctions, big issues, they're gonna have litigations. There's also challenges with diagnosis because doctors make diagnosis on the basis of what the machine tells them. If the machine is old, they're bound to make mistakes. And again, you're gonna be sitting with litigations then. So the whole issue of old medical equipment is a bit of a challenge that needs to be addressed. As I said, there's also the challenge of long queues because the equipment doesn't work. And that has got its own dynamics because patients get upset when they go to 1 meal, they sit for, or 2 meal, 3 meal, and sit for longer hours. Lastly, those old equipment are also a challenge in their own because to repair them, it takes a bit of time because if you buy an equipment today, in 5 years' time, there are no longer spares. So if you need to repair it, it's gonna take you a bit of time to be able to obtain the spares. As I mentioned, because most of the equipment are bought in Europe, in China, and so forth. So if it's old, you really battle to calibrate it and maintain it. In terms of serviceability, there's also a bit of a challenge in terms of the main medical equipment. As you're aware, 1 mil is a training hospital. We also have 2 schools that are responsible for credit-bearing qualification in the country, the Nursing College and the School for Military Training. If we don't have serviceable equipment, we're not going to be in a position to get accreditation. And that's a challenge we're experiencing. At least we've got a bit of professional accreditation for 1 mil, so we're allowed to train, but we've been given a bit of grace to address those requirements. As for 1 mil, we've got a challenge in that we're not able to train. As for the School for Military Training, again, we don't have accreditation because of the issue of equipment. We would want to train grow our own timber. We want to train nurses in the military. We would like to train paramedics in the military because it's cheaper to do that way. If we have to go outside, it's gonna cost the department a bit more. In terms of this equipment, there is also a challenge in terms of the poor defense industry, and specifically looking at Denel, because Denel is the sole supplier for the phase ambulance, for the armored ambulance. So if Denel cannot provide the spares, it cannot provide the spares, then you're sitting with a big problem because you cannot buy the armored ambulance spares over the counter, commercially over the counter. Denel will have to provide. At this stage, they're not just coming to the party. If I may give you an example of ambulances, the challenge we experience with ambulance, we've got about 692 ambulances on our strength. As I mentioned, average age, quite shocking, 23 years of age. I said 12 is 23. 186 of those 692 are serviceable. That means are available for deployment. 205 of those are repairable, and 184 are gone, are beyond repair. There's not much you can do about them. Out of that 184, we must provide ambulances for Mozambique, for DRC, for the N1, N2 operations, and for borderline control. In addition to that, we must provide ambulances for the units in the 9 provinces that must support the Navy, the Air Force, and the Army when they do training, because they can't do training without the support of medical elements. We need to provide ambulances when they do shooting. We must provide ambulances when they do fitness tests and so forth. That is a challenge on its own. The military hospitals requires ambulances in the clinics. We've got 88 ambulances all over the country, so that when somebody calls 11 o'clock at night, we're able to go and fetch him and bring him to the sick bay. There's a requirement that we're not able to satisfy it. The military hospitals need ambulances to be able to do patient transfer. We're battling in that space. Except for the first one and the two, that is the first employment and the first preparation, we're not able to provide the same. That means the 988 clinic are not able to provide ambulance services. 1 military hospital, 2 military hospital, 3 mil are not able to provide ambulances. That means we're making use of private ambulances at a huge cost to the SAMHS and to the Defense Force. So that needs to be addressed. In terms of facilities, we've got facilities that are quite old, and some of them have become unsafe for occupation from an occupational health safety perspective. And due to this, we're not able to accommodate some of our clients in this hospital. We'll have to outsource them to private institutions because they are not, as I said, safe for occupation. So instead of performing a theater in that sick bay, we'll have to outsource it to a private institution. Secondly, some of these facilities, as I've mentioned, they don't meet standards for accreditation. For the nursing college to be able to acquire accreditation, the facility must meet a certain standard. For 1 mil to be able to continue to be allowed to train, they must meet a certain standard. At this stage, we're not there in terms of facilities. And I'm going to take the example of 1 mil in terms of, as I mentioned, is a training unit. They're at this stage unable to provide tertiary and specialized care services at the required frequency due to the non-completion of the refurbishment. We know about the issue of 1 mil as far as refurbishment is concerned. 1 mil has got 18 theaters, only 3 are operational. And remember, 1 mil is responsible for support to Gauteng, to Limpopo, to Mpumalanga, to KZN, and to Northwest, which means all patients coming from those provinces will have to be outsourced because 1 mil is not able to provide those services. As a result of this challenge with the refurbishment, we have not been able to support MONUSCO forces because 1 mil used to be a tertiary hospital for the mission in DRC, for the United Nations. In terms of supply chain management, there's challenges there in terms of the process is so tedious and cumbersome that it's not tailored for health support requirements. For the past 6 months, we have been sitting with so many challenges in terms of support, especially to the hospitals. We have not been able to get a long-term contract for medical waste removal. For the past 6 months, we have been operating on a month-to-month contract at a huge cost to the SAMHS because every month we must go on a quotation at a huge cost. We have not been able to get a contract for the contract boiler at 1 mil. The same thing, we have to go on a month-to-month contract since April, again at a huge cost because every month we must issue a quotation. The same thing with laundry services, a big challenge. The cleaning services, the same issue. We just seem to be battling in sorting these issues of contract, especially long-term, because we can save a lot of money on long-term, but month-to-month, really, we're bleeding money. And I must just mention that all of these challenges with the contract, these 4 contracts, they're all of them more than 5 million, which means it's not something that has to do with CPSC. It's perhaps something that has to do with the departmental procurement, commercial procurement board. That really needs to be looked at. But we're really bleeding money from this month-to-month contract. I mentioned the issue of Denel in terms of supply chain management. There's just no support from Denel. We're battling in terms of our armored ambulances. We even had to deploy our soft skin ambulance in DRC, which is really a bit of a challenge for our people supply then. Again, the whole issue of supply chain management, our echelon support system is not functioning. We're not able to support Corona, Vikel, and Opmistral in terms of pharmaceutical. Even projecting them to those mission areas is a bit of a problem because sometimes you just can't find an aeroplane to be able to take this medication to DRC. And in the meantime, people are running out of medication. And these are really issues that need to be looked at because they going to create problems going forward for us. There's also the issue of supplies not being paid off time, which has got its own dynamics, because then its impact on medicine availability, resulting in buyout at high cost. Because if medication is not available at 1 mil or at 2 mil in a clinic, we'll have to outsource it. We'll have to give a patient authority to go and buy from a private pharmacist at a huge cost again. Outsourcing, the biggest challenge. As I mentioned, over the past 12 years, we have seen an exponential increase in the number of and cost of healthcare outsourcing, including medicine buyout. And that has to do mostly with the challenges with the facilities, as well as the shortage of healthcare workers. But the main cost driver for this practice is hospital stay, where we refer a patient to a hospital and you stay there for a month at a huge cost, because we don't have the capacity and the capability in the SAMHS to be able to keep the patient in 1 mil, 2 mil, and 3 mil, and so forth. So unfortunately, we have to outsource the patient because otherwise we're going to be sitting with challenges. As I mentioned, the biggest contributor to excessive outsourcing in the SAMHS is obviously the issue of the facilities that are not up to standard. 1 mil is a big factor, as I mentioned, because it supports 6 provinces. That means patients from those provinces will have to be outsourced. Obsolete equipment is another factor, especially in clinics. If there's no equipment, if the equipment is not working, we'll have to outsource. The issue of medical inflation, ever increasing, is also the main cost driver for us, because we pay these outsourcing services at a very huge cost. The shortage of healthcare practitioners is a factor as well, why we outsource, because we don't just have capacity to be able to provide some of these services in our facilities. The inadequate supply of medicines. If we don't have medicine, you can't send patient back. You'll have to send him to a private pharmacist to be able to get a medication. So we have to give them buyout, unfortunately, and that costs money. And lastly, there are patients who are residing outside the reach of military hospitals or location where the SAMHS doesn't have clinics. If somebody is staying somewhere in Lusiki, it doesn't have clinic, and is sick 2 o'clock in the morning, you'll have to outsource, you don't have an option. If I may give an example in terms of outsourcing, for the current financial year, we've been allocated 530 million. As we speak today, we have committed 622 million just on outsourcing. So already in the second quarter of the year, financial year, we're sitting with a deficit of 128 million just on outsourcing because of this problem that I've mentioned in the previous slide. If we look at 1 mil alone, the allocation for the current financial year is 129 million. This allocation of 120 million amounts to 70% of the previous 3 years of average expenditure of 1 mil, which was 185. As we speak today, we're projecting a shortfall of 43 million for 1 mil for the next 2 quarters for us to get to the end of the financial year. Outsourcing, let me just maybe put a disclaimer. All healthcare facilities, private, public, use outsourcing because it is actually a strategic tool for achieving reduction in cost, although it doesn't work for us because we simply don't have capacity. So going forward, we're not going to be able to stop outsourcing completely. We will continue to outsource because of what I've mentioned previously on the previous slide, where the practice is the only alternative for patients outside of the military hospital and other locations, because you've got Defence Force members all over the country, and you're not going to be able to have sick bays or clinics all over the country. So in those locations where there are no sick bay, we're still going to outsource going forward. We're also going to outsource when it is cost effective to do so. If it's not going to be cost effective to treat a cancer patient in the military, we're going to have to outsource. But we're going to outsource on the understanding that we're going to be saving money. Because of these challenges, we then set in the SAMHS to say, then what do we do going forward? So we came up with some, service improvement measures as mitigating factors so that at least we're able to keep the organization running. And one of those, especially as far as the shortage of personnel are concerned, we resorted to adjusting staff schedules over time. And that's why we went overtime of more than 40%, because that is the only alternative to keep the hospitals operating for 24 hours. So that at least we can have the hospital operating. We'll have to keep people for longer hours, but then when they stay for longer hours, we need to make sure that they're compensated. We've also reassigned staff from within our facilities to units with pressing staffing needs. To say this area is not critical, so we're going to move staff from this area to another one, so at least we can keep the services going. We have rotated and detached people from one position to another facility so that we can keep services happening in those facilities, which is actually not helping. We've also cancelled non-essential procedures and visits so that those critical services and facility can keep going. We're saying in the those are the short term. In the medium term, we're saying perhaps with the departmental assistance, these are some of the departmental delivery improvements that you need to look at. That would ideally want to have a proper shift system for the hospitals and for those facilities that are supporting training units, either a two-shift system or a three-shift system like all other hospitals. I think that will address the issue of outsourcing and address the issue of burnout and morale for the people that are working for longer hours. We'd like the department to assist us to increase the HR baseline from where we're standing. We're not saying we must go to 10,000, but we said allow us at least to increase by 1, 2, so that we can address these anomalies. And we're saying the department must assist us to prioritize the upgrading and refurbishment of 1 mill, because the biggest cost driver for outsourcing is 1 mill because of those 6 provinces. That for us is a priority. We're saying in departmental assistance must assist us at least in ring-fencing pharmaceutical budget so that we can insulate it from being cut or being redirected for non-medical expenditure, which is a bit of a problem because if it's cut, then we run short of medication. As I mentioned, from time to time, we have to go to DP Bank and ask for additional money. But if we ring-fence at least pharmaceutical, we know that we'll be able to keep the business going for quite longer. We're saying again, if we're not able to give us address the issue of HR, at least let's address the issue of technology, because technology can be a force multiplier. If we've got technology, robotics, that can address some of the issues regarding the staff shortages in the military hospital. We say as a long-term measure, perhaps as a defense force, we need to look at the issues of public-public partnership or private-public partnership. That is maybe the way to go for the future, so that at least within some private hospital, you've got a military ward. Instead of outsourcing the patient, then you can maintain that patient within that ward, within a private facility or within a public facility. In terms of anomalies, structure anomalies, we started with conducting a work study process from the month of March this year so that we can see how we can reconfigure, repurpose, and restructure the SAMHS so that at least we can address some of the challenges we're experiencing. That process is expected to be finalized by the end of May next year, so that we're able to go back to the chief to say we have done the reconfiguring. We think this is the area that needs to be addressed going forward, so that we address the issue of overtime, we address the issue of burnout, morale, as well as outsourcing. In terms of renovation of facilities, our facility plan is being implemented by the logistics division. I can confirm to the committee that in terms of the base hospital, the hospital in Trevela, Saldanha and Kroonstad are nearing completion, so that will address the issue of outsourcing in those areas in a way. And the issue of Polokwane and Middelburg have been completed, the base hospitals, they're just waiting for commissioning. The only challenge there, as I mentioned previously, is that this hospital may not be commissioned due to the lack of staff, because you can have the hospital there, but if you're not going to be able to get Treasury to approve an extension of the headcount, we're not going to be able to run the hospital, these hospitals that are going to be completed in the near future. In terms of outsourcing, we also came up with an intervention plan to address the high cost of outsourcing. SG has put a management intervention plan in place to minimize the cost of outsourcing, and that management plan is called the Managed Healthcare System. In terms of that plan, we should be able to acquire specified services from a defined quality at an agreed price or tariff from designated service provider. That means we're going to be entering into agreement with service providers that are prepared to give us, to provide services to us at a reduced fee. And that in a way should address the issue of the high cost of spend we have on outsourcing. That plan was approved on Tuesday. There is a project team that has been implemented. They've been given the target of the 1st of April for the first phase of the implementation of this project. We're hoping in the first year to at least decrease outsourcing by about 40% through this plan. In terms of the ambulances, we've got a plan as well. We can confirm that through the DP Bank, we've been able to start with the process to procure about 50 ambulances, which we should be able to succeed before the end of the financial year. And I can also confirm that 180 million has been set aside by National Treasury to procure ambulances for the next 3 years. And so as far as ambulances, especially your metro ambulances, we should be able to address this issue in the next 3 years. In terms of equipment, and again, thanks to GP Bag, I can confirm that we received some money to be able to procure new X-ray equipment for 3 military hospitals, and that should address the issue of outsourcing of radiation services in that hospital as well. In terms of the challenges, as I mentioned, of operational medics, the paramedics, the shortages there. There is also a plan in place from next year. We should be sending about 100 students to University of Johannesburg and Sefako Makgatho universities for the next 3 years to address the critical shortages. And we hope in 5 years' time, we'll be able to come to the committee and say that issue of shortages of medics, especially operational one, have been addressed. In conclusion, I just want to say, in terms of medical consumables, pharmaceutical and calibration of medical equipment, or let me put it this way, medical consumables, pharmaceutical, the calibration of equipment, the poor standard of facility in the spare parts supply continue to be the main challenges for us to being combat ready and achieving and providing the required services. The continuous increase in the footprint of our patients, which results in increased demand for healthcare services, will continue to impact negatively on the budget and service delivery, unless that increase in footprint is also reciprocated by an increase in allocation from the department. And we say, despite these challenges, we forge ahead and we continue to strive to provide excellence in terms of comprehensive provision of quality health services and care. That, Minister and SG, concludes our presentation. I wish to hand over back to the SG. Thank you.
Thank you, General Langa, for the presentation. To the chairperson of the committee, that is our presentation. And I've got several members from the management of the SAMHS that have joined us. They will assist me in answering any questions and give clarification where necessary. I hand over to you, Minister, and the chairperson of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Surgeon General, for the presentation. I will now allow honorable members to interact with this presentation. I see the hand of Honorable Murray. Honorable Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair. My apologies. I think most of the presentations I followed while driving from Parliament, so I've just arrived back at home. So I'm not going to put a lot of questions. The only few that I've got is I just want to touch base in terms of the facilities of 1 mil, 2 mil, and 3 mil hospitals. We know, and it has been emphasized tonight again, the problems and challenges that we've got with 1 mil, and the fact that we sit with major funding problems and challenges. So we know that we will, at least over the medium term, still have major challenges with regards to 1 mil hospital and providing of services. 2 mil hospital, last time we have visited 2 mil hospital, it was a relatively new hospital, and I think it's a relatively modern hospital, although it was enormously under-resourced. And I just want to find out about 2 mil hospital as well, to find out, and maybe I must first refer to 3 mil hospital. 3 mil hospital we have not visited yet, but we intend to visit 3 mil hospital next month. But we know that 3 mil hospital has got very special expertise and medical knowledge. I know that every time that there's a viral outbreak or a virus and the pandemic as well, radio stations always spoke to doctors from 3 mil hospital as being experts in this field. So we've got 3 hospitals, one that has got enormous deficiencies And the other one, I don't know the situation with 3 Mill in terms of facilities, but we know the potential of 2 Mill Hospital. Also, I recall when we visited 2 Mill Hospital, we were taken into the so-called VIP or presidential unit that was not resourced at that stage and not populated at that stage. I also recall when we visited the 1 Mill, the 7th floor, we were told that the one corner of the 7th floor is the presidential unit or the VVIP unit. Now, tonight we've heard that we have got no facilities for a presidential unit or for a VVIP unit. So what is the real situation with that regard? And what about those facilities that we have seen and that we have experienced there? So because somewhere we must try to utilize the good things that we've got, taken into account the challenges that we've got with 1 Mill. So how can we utilize, is there something in the other 2 hospitals that we can maybe strengthen or make use of more from them? Then in terms of the PPPs that was referred to, I mean, that is a principle that I will certainly support, because we know about the under-resourcement of the hospitals. Now, I want to ask the question, it has been mentioned about PPPs with private hospitals, but what about PPPs with provincial health departments? Because in provincial health departments, we've got clinics in all the rural areas. We've got hospitals, we've got provincial and regional hospitals, and we've got specialists, and we've got tertiary hospitals in all the provincial health departments. So what has been done to foster relationships in that regard, that those hospitals can provide services, and obviously there's then just invoice the department. On the ambulances, when I heard about the presentation tonight on the ambulances, the first thing that came to my mind, which was a huge embarrassment, and that was the time when ex-minister President Mandela, when he was on his last and on his deathbed, and how an embarrassment was it when the SAMHS ambulances broke down on the road. That we can never allow again, and we should at least provide for some core capabilities in terms of military ambulances. Then I just wanted to ask something that was not reported yet, but that I've lately just, was in the back of my mind. Years ago, in the old 1 military hospital, I don't know how many people know about the old 1 military hospital, that was converted into a rehabilitation center. And whether that rehabilitation center is still operational, and if not, what other facilities do we utilize or try to utilize, or where we've got a problem and challenges for rehabilitation? Because our soldiers are fighting wherever, they're training in all the circumstances, and they can be injured, and they then need rehabilitation after operations. Is that still a factor? And to what extent do we provide for that or not? And what is the alternative for the stand-in service for that? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mare. Any other Honorable Mafanya?
Thank you very much, Chair. The General Langa, thanks for the presentation, as well as yourself, SG, the Minister. The issue at hand is that we are aware of the challenges that has been presented by General Langa. And we are also aware of the competing needs of SAMHS. And equally, we attribute those to decades of wasteful expenditure, fruitless expenditure, corruption, and so on. But the reality is that we are still having pending cases against that background. Now, Also, the issue of budget cuts over decades brought us to where we are. Now, my expectation was to repurpose SAMHS to say, notwithstanding all these other problems, how do we ring-fence priority projects? Because there are so many, they constitute billions and billions of rands that cannot be achieved overnight. It's a question that SAMHS has got to reprioritize and say, with the little that we have, if we could be attended to ABC projects, and the money should be ring-fenced towards the development thereof, so that we are on a mission of cost saving and bringing back the department to where it used to be, even surpass where it should be. Take, for instance, the SAMHS, take, for instance, Military One Hospital, where the upper level, I think is 7. We should be knowing, by introducing what we did at level 7, how much was their cost saving. And if, as you rightly put it, that we are having 18 theaters and only 3 are functional. What will it be if we add more 3 or 4, so that they come to a point where they are operational, notwithstanding the fact there are also staff components that is also needed? Because now all this that are mentioned cannot be addressed in the manner they should be, so that we are on par with what we want to achieve. So the reality is that my questions would be to General Langa and the team. How would you help in ring-fencing priority projects? Because we are aware that everything is of great importance, but the reality, they cannot be served at the go, notwithstanding the fact that there is no money. That is my input, Chair. Thank you very much.
All right, no. Thank you. Any other hands, colleagues?
If I may.
Honorable Ryder, you'll be followed by Honorable Mutsamai, then followed by Honorable Kaba. Yeah, in that order.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Yeah, so I just have one question, and I'm not really sure that it's aimed at the presenters, but more at the ministry. And I think that one of the issues that we struggle with as the 2 committees, or 3 committees really, but is the fact that we sit still with an unfunded organigram within the Defence Force, within the Department of Defence. And the fact that we've got an unfunded organigram, and that the medical side of things are suggesting that they have insufficient staff to perform the minimum requirements on their service, means that perhaps we have taken the wrong focus, or we have too many people in one space, leaving not enough in the other. And I do think I'd like to hear a comment from the ministry about the spread and the prioritization. Certainly, I don't believe that the Treasury is going to give us a big bonus in February of next year. Certainly, the signals are not there, following the medium-term budget policy statement yesterday. So I don't think that there's going to suddenly be a Santa Claus in the next budget. But yeah, what are we going to do to shuffle things and ensure that there is correct, appropriate staffing? And is it a priority from the ministry side? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Honorable Mutsamai.
Thank you, Chairperson. Even though we don't have a light here. Oh. Chair, I just want to know, you see, we have a sick bay in Doronkop, they call it 21 Battalion. This sick bay, it was made for minority during the apartheid era. But now, my problem is there's no medication on that hospital. Sometimes when you get there, you will be told that there's no treatment. And nothing is happening at that hospital. I don't know when they are going to extend the building so that it can occupy all the mass that are going to attend for the treatment on that hospital. Lastly, Chair, there's I don't know whether that's an act that was used during the liberation strike. When I moved with my daughter somewhere else as a military veteran, and I got an accident with my daughter, I will be taken to the military hospital, which is a first-class hospital or sick bay. But my daughter will be separated from me to another place. When are we going to change this act? I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Maybe before you come, Honorable Chair, so that when you come, you raise your questions and then you take over from here. I'm a bit worried, Minister, and this is maybe we'll need your intervention together with the SecDef. There's generally a problem with contract management in the department. As you might have noticed, even the SAMHS have the same problem, where they indicate that their supply chain processes are tedious and cumbersome. They don't have a medical waste removal contract. 1 mil coal contract boilers system, it's not there. 1 mil laundry services contract is not there. Cleaning services is not there. And this, there were contracts before, but because of the challenges that are there, I don't know what are those challenges, have led to a situation whereby the department is unable to enter into contract, which will save time. This thing of month to month, for me, it's a bit problematic because some processes will be circumvented. As a result, you will have the AG coming after you in terms of not following certain processes, because you always do things when you are in a hurry. Whilst it will be a different story when you have contracts for 3 years or so, you know who will be supplying you with which services. But there's generally a problem in that space. How you manage contracts, how you execute, how the personnel at the level of supply chain management execute their responsibilities together with the end users as to what must happen. There's a problem. I think, Minister, you need to pay a closer attention in that space, so that you correct all these things and ensure that things run smoothly. Because it can't continue to be correct that some of the challenges that are being raised here, you'll wonder, it's not the unique service. We've got the Department of Health in the country, where they managed to have some of these contracts. They are able to manage their supply chain management there and there, even though they are not perfect. But the manner in which things are run in the Defense Force or DOD is totally unacceptable, and something needs to be done. Because the next thing you'll be complaining about the resources. Lots of resources will be wasted on these quotations and month-to-month people, because people will be able to collect and charge you exorbitant prices for services that you can contract on and have reasonable cost of expenditure in that regard. But the manner in which you are doing it's totally unacceptable. That needs to be addressed. And in terms of outsourcing, I'm not sure whether it will be a good thing to do to rely on the private sector as opposed to building capability, so that you remain hope in terms of the medical services and capabilities that you used to possess in the continent. I'm not sure whether you are giving up on that to an extent where you are opting to partner with the private sector on some of the areas that you think you will not be able to survive on your own in terms of ensuring that you build capabilities. I'm not sure. Maybe you can expatiate on that aspect in terms of your long-term vision. How are you going to do that? And how are you going to ensure that the honors that is on the military health service does not fade to the hands of private? Yeah, Chair, over to you. I think those are the concerns that I wanted to raise. And thank you very much. Over to you, Chair.
Okay, no, thank you very much, and good evening, colleagues. Thank you very much for holding the fort, Honorable Muhle. It's much appreciated. Let me invite the General Langa to field, to provide answers to the question. I will then take a second round of questions. Maybe the executive would want to come in or wait until we take all the questions. I'm not quite certain. General Langa, let's deal with the first round.
Honorable Kaba, as the SG, I will respond, and then I will give.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Chairperson. The first issues raised by Honorable Mare, I will look at that. Firstly, he spoke about the facilities at the 3 hospitals. The 7th floor, indeed, the 7th floor was refurbished during 2020. And I'm glad to say to you, the 7th floor is an example of what can be done if resources are pooled and put in one place. We have a state-of-the-art in terms of high care and ICU capability. The challenge again is human resources for us to be able to utilize that floor fully. And then the issue of 2 military hospitals with regards to it being completed in terms of refurbishment. Indeed, 2 military hospitals refurbishment has been completed, and again, it's a state-of-the-art facility. There are VIP rooms there which can cater for our VIPs. Again, in this regard, the challenge is human resources, nursing, and the relevant doctors. 3 military hospitals, which you say you're gonna visit next month. Indeed, 3 mil hospital has got a specialist in infectious diseases. And that facility does have a special facility with regards to infectious diseases. What is required there is for us to procure just a few things, a mobile X-ray, and then the unit will be fully functional. And that facility has been declared to SADC as one of a referral hospital with regards to infectious diseases like Ebola and any other contagious hemorrhagic fevers. So 3 military hospital indeed does have that specialized capability. And we very soon we will have what is required for us to declare it to be fully functional. I think Honorable Mare was talking about pooling resources and strengthening other hospitals. Yes, indeed, that can be done. However, let's bear in mind that these other hospitals still provide a service and they've got specific clients that they serve. General Langa did indicate the type of population that 2 military covers. And to take away resources from 1 military hospital to say maybe 2 mil may not be a good idea because services are still required there. And then he spoke about the issue of public-private partnership and public, and why don't we use a public hospital? Please bear in mind, I don't know if members of the committee are aware that when we refer our patients to the public sector, we are charged private fees. And in these public facilities, you will know they are already overwhelmed. And when we send our patients there, it's first come, first serve. And therefore, utilizing the private sector and pay private fees makes sense in the fact that when we require a bed, we will get it in the private sector, but it's not the same in the public sector. I'm stressing the fact that members must understand that when we refer our patients to the public sector, we get charged private fees. We are considered to be a private medical aid. So we are not treated there for free. So using the public sector may be a good idea. However, we don't get first come, first serve. You wait, if there is a bed, you wait for it, like any other patient. The issue of ambulances, General Langa has indicated that with the intervention of the SecDef, we have been given funds to procure ambulances. And of this year, before the end of this financial year, we would have procured about 50 ambulances. And they will go a long way in assisting our challenge of ambulances. And then General Langa indicated that Treasury has given us 180 million for the next 3 years. And bear in mind that 180 million did not just come from the goodness of Treasury. They took that money from overtime because they believe we are wasting overtime, which we did explain our reasons why we have to pay our people overtime, but they felt we are wasting that money. So they took it from compensation of employee and ring-fence it for ambulances. So what I'm saying here, we'll buy the ambulances, but we may not be able to pay overtime where it's required. He raised the issue of old 1 military hospital. That center, indeed, there was a rehabilitation center in Tabatwane. And for members who know Tabatwane, they will know it's a dolomite area. As I'm speaking to you today, just a kilometer from that facility, the road sank. So the whole area is a dolomite area. And that place was closed and it's not being utilized because of dolomite. At the moment, we do not have a specific rehabilitation unit. I must say the previous Minister of Defense who left, she had a passion for us to establish a rehabilitation center where we looked at several facilities to do that. However, at the end of the day, funds are required.
Sorry, have we lost the Surgeon General?
My apologies. When did I get lost so I can go back?
I don't know whether the problem was on this side. Was it?
No,
did you
it was on my side.
On your side, okay. You may
Yeah,
continue.
I touched the mute. I think it was when I was talking about the rehabilitation center.
Yes, yes.
Where I was.
Correct, sir.
Yes, where I indicated that the rehabilitation center that Honorable Marais is talking about, indeed, it was there. However, Tabatswane is a dolomite center. The whole of Tabatswane, buildings are sinking down, and that facility has been condemned and closed. As I'm speaking to you today, the road behind that place in front of the military police sunk due to a dolomite, and that area will not be utilized. So that rehabilitation center has been closed, and we do not have a specific rehabilitation center in the SAMHS. Within one military hospital, we have a small rehabilitation center, but it's not doing the job that it's supposed to do, as well as two military hospitals, a small section of rehabilitation center. Then Honorable Mafanya, most of what he said were comments with regards to repurposing the SAMHS and ring fencing funds to prioritize certain things. Yes, as the SAMHS, we are in the process of doing exactly that. Director Planning, General Langa himself, his team is going around the country where we are trying to look at where can we shift resources to another area for us to be able to prioritize more critical areas. But at the end of the day, if you remember when we started presenting, we indicated to you what our responsibilities are. With the same resources, we are supposed to cover both our outputs, and it's not an easy issue. However, ring fencing and prioritizing and dealing with a particular project at a time will be the best, provided funds are given. And then Honorable Ryder, he spoke about the issue of unfunded structure and that we may not get a bonus from Treasury anytime soon. Indeed, we may not get a bonus from Treasury. However, look at the mandate and what we are supposed to provide. Unfortunately, when we are instructed to do something, we cannot say no, we go. Many of you know that the public servants may go on strike. And when they go on strike, who do they look at? They look at the SAMHS and many other responsibilities that we are supposed to deal with. So the structure, unfortunately, it's required with the kind of activities that we're expected to do. And then Honorable Mutsamai, I think he mentioned the issue of Doornkop sick bay and why it's not being extended so it can address the new people that rely on that facility. Again, a lot of facilities in the SAMHS needs to be upgraded and refurbished. Again, probably with ring fencing certain funds and redirecting them to priority areas, that could be the case. But for me, is to identify those areas that we can reprioritize, and we are in the process of doing such, and we will provide the list of what is required to the Defense Works Formation. And then Honorable Mundle, contract management, I think you were commenting there. And in terms of us, why do we rely on private sector and not build our own capacity? The aim would be to build our own capacity and be self-sufficient. And again, when we explained the reasons for outsourcing are quite many, and some of them are beneficial. So that's why General Langa indicated the issue of managed healthcare, where we will be able to decide that this service we need to provide within the SAMHS. There are certain services that are not cost effective for us to provide within the SAMHS, and those will continue to be outsourced. And that's why we have embarked on the process of managed healthcare. It will assist us to manage our outsourcing because we may not be able to completely stop outsourcing. So those are some of the measures that we're putting in place to respond to that. But then those are the questions that were raised. I don't know if my colleagues or the sector have got anything to add if I left out something. Honorable Klava, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me take some more hands. I saw the co-chairs and Alec Chabeling and Mr. Maliake Shelembe in that order, please.
Thanks, Chairperson.
Chabeling.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Chairperson. I just want to know from the general that what happens to the doctors who are working at the 1 mill, all those specialists that we had in the country. Now, with the collapse of the services and and the closure of some sections of the hospital, have we lost them to the private sector? Is it possible to get them back? What is our relationship with them? That's what I want to know. Thanks.
Thank you, Bab Shelembe.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, in terms of, say, a reprioritization, I'm just checking. I think the first thing we have to accept that, anyway, the budget is not enough. And we don't have a choice. We have to live with that budget by trying all means to ensure that we prune down the budget so that at least something is done. Now, Chairperson, I was listening that, like one military hospital, it's got, a big, volume of, patients, to deal with, whereas, their capacity cannot meet the requirement. I'm checking, say like, KwaZulu-Natal is just, adjacent to, Free State, where we have two, military hospitals, three, something. What stopped, the department to reprioritize and say, okay, we have too much for, the one military hospital, in Pretoria. Let's get, say maybe some of the provinces that are closer to, say to Free State. As I'm saying now, we have like KZN is close there. What stopped them, to look at that if KwaZulu-Natal can be incorporated to that military hospital? And then two, Chairperson, I understand that, while the department is trying maybe to send their patients to public hospital, they have an issue of, not getting, the priority, like say, they must come first, in front of those, who are always waiting there. Now, what if maybe say a temporary arrangement or an interim, arrangement is made, with the public hospital to say, look, in the meantime, we are trying, to address the issue of, say, the budget, because the way they are saying that they spend much to send, patients to private hospital. Maybe in that period, while, that arrangement is agreed to with, the public hospital or the minister relevant, at least maybe there will be some sort of saving of taking, the people to a private hospital until such time, the department is able, to deliver accordingly. Look, for now, it's clear that, it is a must that, the government take care of, the patient, especially those people who are responsible for protecting our country. Even if they get that priority from the hospital, one would understand to say, hey, these people are looking, to our borderlines, are looking to our country. That I'm just checking whether there is something of, they can think of engaging, say, like, Department of Health as a stakeholder to say, we can't afford. Because even now, if they don't have money to take these people to a private hospital, what does it mean? It means these people must die. So I'm just checking maybe in those two angles, where the department can look at that to ensure that our soldiers are taken care of. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I'm looking at the 1998 budget review. 1998 budget review. Chapter 5 under defense. In 1998 to 1999, that financial year, 89-90, the defense spending was 4% of GDP. We understand the situation. And in 95 to 96, it dropped to 2.3%. In 1998, 1999, the year of this review, the defense spending was 1.5% of GDP. The MTF projection at the time was to reduce the expenditure to 1.4% of the GDP by 2001. So in other words, the document, it says by 2001, the defense spending must have reached 1.4% of GDP, and that would have meant the department spending 55% of its budget on personnel compensation of expenditure. At the time, when this document was drafted, the personnel was 95,503. In the outer years, 2001 was supposed to reach 76,615. In other words, in 2001, what was projected to happen was that the defense reduced to 1.4%, the personnel budget 55% of defense spending, and the personnel numbers 76,615. I want to believe that that is the time that the general was talking about that the SAMHS staff establishment was approved in 2000, year 2000. The structure had 10,878 posts at 6.2 billion rand. That's the current value terms. But now they stand at 6,000. The structure, the post stand at 6,612 at 3.7 rand value, 3.7 billion rand value. Now, I mean, this question maybe it's broad because it starts to say when these figures were drawn up, the structure was drawn up, was it what basically informed the figures at the time? I'm raising this point because we have not had the force design that will give South Africa or the SNDF the numbers that it needs. The first review that was conducted in 1998, it was talking about between, about 30,000 to 70,000 members by 2001. That's the first review. And we never reached, that review was never implemented. The 2005 review was conducted, the 2015 review was done, but the force design was deferred to a later discussion view that was going to give us the strength that is required for the SNDF, be it for all services and divisions. We don't have that information. And so we're basically working on historical figures. That's my challenge number one, that we have, the department has not done what it ought to have done, so that it determines in certain terms what strength it actually needs to carry out its mandate. That's my problem. And now, I actually equate that stuff, that force design thing, to doing a zero budget. So that has not happened in the department. Now, I don't know what informed the 10,878 to then say, now you operated about 60% of that capacity that was determined at that. And maybe the quickly, the better, because it will give us at least a clearer picture of the strength that is basically required and for our force. But that will be across the services and divisions. That's the first part. And then the second question I have, it's that, you see, when you needed money, when your predecessor SG needed money for the Cuban truck, the Heberon, it was COVID, I understand, 260 million. That money was found without any problem. You have military one or hospital sitting where it is sitting now, with some of the facilities being taken away because under the disguise of refurbishment, and those services have not been brought back. In other words, that project remains incomplete, and money was spent, but the service we received, it's not commensurate to the money we spent. The evidence is there, even carried in the report of the what do you call that, Bacchus report, that in the process we lost money, and that we still have not recovered. I don't know what else we do where we spend money on things that really don't matter, and then come and say, look, we are underfunded, we don't have this, we don't have that. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board just to check if the monies that are allocated to the department gets value for every rand spent. But you can only achieve that when there's a level of accountability for the resources allocated to the department, which is not happening. When the department of this department complains about underfunding and that certain services are being squeezed out for lack of funding and so on, I listen to it, but then there's something in me that says the department is not disciplined when it comes to the application of the resources. That's what comes up immediately. Now, see, that's where the problem is. Now, I to be honest, I hear you, but I think we need evidence that says, indeed, you don't have the money and every single cent is spent correctly and the department is receiving value for money. But for what we have seen with the 260 million rand found in the midst of what you're talking about, ambulances in the situation that they are, and this facility and that facility, and not in order, obsolete equipment, but money was found for something else. I mean, it escapes, it really defies, well, let me say it escapes me in a serious way. I thought I should just raise that point so that whoever makes a comment does take this into account. Of course, I feel sorry that the department, because you buy equipment from overseas, you procure from overseas, you will be subjected to inflation, medical inflation, and like any other department that procures its equipment from overseas, and you'll be exposed to the exchange rate. But my question now, having said this, it's we have not spoken about the morale of the staff that is there. There was a report that there was an issue of OSD that has not been paid since then. And the issue of medical legal claims, given what we have just explained to us now, how dire the situation is, has the department not been exposed to medical legal claims already? And if yes, what is the contingent liability that arises as part of that medical legal claims? Thank you very much. I'm sorry to have taken long. My apologies. And Malaki, I still see your hand. I think it's a legacy hand. All right. Now, an old hand, sir. Okay. Old hand. Thank you so much. Colleagues, is there any question? Because I said this is the last round of questions.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Marais, are you covered and all colleagues are all covered?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And over to you, SJ.
Thank you, Honorable Baba. I see the hand of GOC 1 mil. I'll give him an opportunity to also speak. I just want to before I respond to your comments as well as Honorable Shilembe, I need to go back to Honorable Mutsamai. He raised the issue of why meal vets dependent are not seen in the military hospitals or services. I cannot answer that question. I think that is at the level of the military veteran sub-department. But at the moment, we are only responsible for the member. In terms of the decision not to include the dependents, I cannot answer that one. Honorable Shilembe, no. Yes, that was Honorable Shilembe. Why people from KZN cannot go to 3 military hospital. Just maybe info, 3 military hospital is quite a small hospital, and in terms of the resources with regards to healthcare personnel, it's quite low. And people who are from KZN, they will tell you it's easier to go to Pretoria than going to Bloemfontein, and that's why they rely on 1 military hospital. But another reason is that 1 mil would be able, normally would be able to provide most of the services that 3 mil can provide. So this is the issue of what services are available at 3 mil. They may not be available and be available at 1 military hospital. And the fact that it's easier for a member to travel to Pretoria, but that may sound strange to you, but our members have expressed that it's easier for them to come to Pretoria. Honorable Klaba, you've raised quite a few issues that I may not be able to answer. Specifically, you indicating that it was easy for the defense to get money to buy interferon. I don't think I'm in a position to answer that one. But with all the reduction in the budget that is given to the Department of Defense, their responsibilities did not diminish. They actually increased. So in terms of whether the government does get value for money with regard to what they apportion to the Department of Defense, if you ask me, I'll say yes, they get it. They get value for money in all the services of the Department of Defense. And with regards to the SAMHS, I do not have to mention what they do. We have, in this presentation, we're trying to indicate in terms of our responsibilities that we do. And on top of that, when the chips are down, the government looks at the SAMHS to provide those services. And we've proven that over the years. Most recent is the floods in KZN, we were there. And if the public servants go on strike, we will be called upon. And with on top of all those responsibilities that we are mandated to, we do these other ones on top. So in terms of value for money, I've got no doubt we do provide for that. Let me give, I think, GOC 1 mil and then Director Nursing to add. They seem to have something to add, Honorable Tama, if you agree.
Yes, SG.
Yeah, GOC 1 mil and then General Maso.
Thank you very much, sir. This is GOC 1 mil. I'm not sure if I'm audible. I had wanted to just add on what the SG had said initially when he responded to some of the questions, just to give a perspective from the military. I'm not sure if because the discussions involved, I'm not sure if I'm still be allowed to add chairperson to the delivery of the 731
GOC. GOC. May I request? I think your connectivity is a bit unstable. May I request that you switch off your video, so that you stabilize your connection. Thank you so much. You may go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. Technology. I'm not sure if my feed now is a bit better. Sir?
It's a bit better, sir.
Thank you very much. I was saying that Honorable Mafanya had asked a question that SG had responded to. I wanted to give perspective because his specific question was, how much has the hospital saved since the 7th floor was delivered to 1 military hospital? And I wanted to quickly say that if we referred to a research that was done in KZN 2 years ago, where they looked at how much a hospital would cost for people to be in a unit, they found that on average, say, it would take a mean, when we're looking at the clinical service that is rendered totally, which is what we are going to do, which we have not yet quantified, but we can extrapolate, is that it takes about 250,000 for a patient to be in intensive care unit. Patients who are in intensive care units are patients that would not stay there for about 5 days, or will be 5 days or more, which is what we have been seeing during the COVID time. The 7th floor was delivered to 1 military hospital in 2020. And up to date, we have seen over 5,000 patients that have rotated through that. For us, that is value for money. The second thing is, out of patients that have circulated on the 7th floor because of COVID, we have seen over 100 of them that ended up in ICU, therefore meaning they required full intensive care unit care. And if we have to extrapolate from this study by the KZN grouping, which we will be able to make available, one can see that you only need 4 patients to breach a 1 million mark in terms of expenditure on a patient that is in ICU. And further extrapolating on that, it means you need about 600 patients for us to breach the mark at which the 7th floor was delivered to 1 million for, which was 148 million. It at 150 million to make that facility available. So you needed 600 patients. Now I'm talking about 5,000 patients, and I'm still in the hundreds. Already one can see that the threshold of what was delivered for up to date could easily have been breached. Therefore, it means we have been saving money henceforth. But now the other thing about it is that we're talking about a project that is not only ending now. We're having this capability, like the SG says, for many years to come. Therefore, the saving in terms of cost already are, if not have breached that, we are already at that level of what we have spent. But going forward, that facility is going to be there for many years to come. Therefore, definitely, when facilities are upgraded and we are able, even with a shortage of personnel, to be able to have taken care of these kind of patient numbers, there was a lot of saving in terms of costs. The other question which was asked by Honorable Marais as a final question on the rehabilitation center, which the SG has asked, I wanted to respond to another aspect of it, that we had gone, for instance, to collaborate with Vescopis, which is also a public entity. This is specifically on psychiatric patients and rehab to a particular extent, because where we had moved this rehab in one military hospital was found not to be feasible, and the regulatory bodies were not happy with. But the problem comes where we are overloading a system which is Vescopis, like the SG said earlier, which is already overloaded themselves. So they can only grant us a number of beds that we can use in that facility. Over and above that, Vescopis would, for instance, function, say, at a level of confidentiality. We rehabilitate people that are classified secret and top secret that are in these missions, for instance, take Mozambique, who come back and we have to debrief these people. This is information that cannot go outside of the Defense Force because we have the mandate to secure state information and communication and so forth. Now, the more we outsource these patients like these ones to these public entities, then we lose this critical aspect of information security. And those are some of the aspects that we are looking at. Hence, so we do collaborate with public entities, but there are many factors that come into it. The last one is about this rehab. I think I just needed to say also that as much as it was closed in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. All these years, we've been functioning without it. Then the Honorable also asks about the challenges of contracts, which the SG has answered. But the thing is, it's a bit outside of the SAMHS because these contracts are not negotiated within the SAMHS. They're negotiated within the DoD, but in another division, and this causes all the challenges. Correctly so, as you've said, we've already breached all the PFMA together with prescripts by Auditor General by exceeding the number of months that we can go on this month to month. But if those entities that are responsible for contracts within the broader Defense Force are not giving us the results that are desired, then it is quite a challenge. But safe to say, like General Langa said, a lot of money that is lost continues to be lost through these month-to-month contracts that we incur. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, GOC. I think before the Director Nursing answers, I think there was a question by Honorable Nchabeleng, which I missed in terms of responding. He was asking what happened to the doctors that left when one military hospital stopped functioning fully, whether we can get them back. Let me say to you, most of those people that left us, they did not leave us to the private sector. Most of them left us to the Department of Health. And therefore, it was not about money, I believe. And most of them, when they left, when we did interviews with them, they say they cannot afford to sit in a hospital where there are no equipment for them to practice their trade. So most of them left us because they felt, look, their skills are being lost in an environment where they are unable to practice their trade on the basis that there is no equipment. So the issue of old obsolete equipment played a role in terms of them leaving. Whether they can come back if we improve our facilities and what we can provide, well, I cannot say. But what I'm trying to say to you, Honorable Nchabeling, is that majority of them did not leave to go to the private sector. They went to the Department of Health. Director Nessing.
Good evening and thank you, members of the JTC. This is Brigadier General Maso, Director Nursing. I'm going to start by saying the aim of this exercise was to talk about outsourcing and the patient load. And if I may say before I answer the questions, the only way that we can be out of outsourcing at the hospitals and it's in SAMHS in general is to be self-sufficient. And this self-sufficiency has been addressed by General Langa in every respect. But if I may start by talking about this first question that was asked by the question about if we could manage to secure 260 million for Optusano and not to prioritize our engagements in terms of building our infrastructure. If I may say, if I am back to request from the SG to say, I want to say there is a commitment in terms of getting our infrastructure right, but unfortunately, the infrastructure is not built by SAMHS funds, but by the PDW. So if only we could, like we did with Floor 7, despite the fact that there are legal processes that are in place, but put the legal processes on the side and prioritize an 18-month project and commit to rebuilding 1 mill to where it was before to ensure that we have minimal outsourcing as much as we can. Then we can manage the legal processes, but in the interim, get 1 mill running so that at least we can prove beyond doubt that we can save so much money for outsourcing. That is my first response to that one. I need to respond to the other question of Honorable Murray, the one of Military Hospital and the isolation facility. SG has responded to that question, but say, if I may just add, that despite 3 mill being at that level, it is also having staffing that was done prior to the hospital being reconfigured, which then made it to be bigger and needs more resources in terms of personnel as well. But this, the SAMHS has already submitted a document to the Minister of Defense in terms of converting some of the posts of nursing so that they can fit for the purpose, needing to repurpose the posts that we currently have so that they can fit what we need to do. I need to also respond to a question on the PPP. Despite the presentation having been about public-private partnership, there is also public-public partnership that SAMHS is currently doing, but this is through MOUs. Usually, if there is no MOU that is already in place, we have to initiate a new MOU, and there are engagements from the SAMHS in terms of getting rooms in different areas where there is no hospitals, so that if those engagements can be agreed, then there could be an MOU where certain rooms are afforded for admitting our military patients. And then the SG, if with the repurposed structure, then would allocate personnel when we've got a patient admitted within the public sector. That could be then reducing the waiting time. Then I would like to respond to the question on what informed the first design in 1998, where the first design was 76,615. And what informed the current state? Why are we in the current state? As everybody has said, we are in the current state because of reduction in the defense spending relevant to the GDP. But of significance is that there was a significant drive to reduce the cost of employment. Hence, then SAMHS is at the level of almost 50% staffing, because to afford operational responsibilities, you had to balance it, operational costs over cost of employment. Hence, we are in the situation that we find ourselves. Hence, we are motivating for, let us be agreed and funded to be fully staffed in terms of the cost of employment, so that it does not jeopardize, because SAMHS, cost of employment in SAMHS, this is actually our main weapon. The main weapon in SAMHS is its personnel, because that is the capital that we have got. Because the equipment could be there, but if the specialists are not in place, if the specialist morale is not good, then we wouldn't be able to utilize that equipment. Then if I may answer, there was a question about OSD. With the morale, the minister recently signed the OSD, and yes, there has been payment of the people of the OSD of the nurses from 2007 to 2013. There are minimal left over, which the HR is busy attending to at the moment. I thank you.
Honorable Gaba, I think we attended to all the questions. Thank you, Sabine.
Okay. No, thank you very much. I'm not too sure. There is a hand of Brigadier General Maso. Is that a legacy hand? I think it's a legacy.
Yes,
hand.
yes, sir.
And SG, in military one hospital, when we visited, we were told that some equipment was bought, and the people who procured, did not whether the equipment would fit within the rooms in the hospital, and was then kept in the storage. That was when we visited about 2 years back, and the procurement had happened many years, away. What is the status of that? Before I ask the other colleagues, before I go back to the sector and the minister.
Thank you, Honorable Gaba. That matter is being dealt with through a finding by the Auditor General, and we have provided ratification plans to deal with that matter. I'm not so sure if it will be a good idea for me to comment on this platform. We have responded to the Auditor General with regards to that, and the ratification plans are in place and being implemented with regards to that equipment.
Please be open, SG, with us.
Oh, okay. The fact is that that equipment was procured, and as you rightly said, so it was kept in storage because it was bought specifically for the first floor of one military hospital. And I think it's common knowledge that that floor has not been finalized, and therefore that equipment was never utilized. The fact is that medical equipment, and specifically in this case, those were X-ray equipment. When you store them for too long, the X-ray tube gets damaged. And on our investigation, we found that to address the issue of the X-ray tube in each of that equipment will cost far much more than what we paid when we bought that equipment. So in that regard, it was decided repairing this equipment will not be cost effective. As you know, that one military hospital still has not been finalized. So it would mean that we will have to wait until that facility is finalized and then do repairs. So on the basis that trying to refurbish that equipment and utilize it in the future may become wasteful expenditure, because we don't know when the first floor will be finished, and therefore we would fix that equipment and keep it on storage again, and we will end up with wasteful expenditure. So the assessment of that equipment was that it must be disposed of. Due to technology advancement, it's way outdated, and repairing that equipment may not be cost effective. So the plan is to dispose of the equipment. Thank you.
You still want to dispute the issue of value for money? Question.
It will be a long discussion between.
No, let's move. In moving forward, I'm sure the SecDef and the minister will help us. It is to say, if we make a joint approach to National Treasury, and we ask for an allocation to be ring-fenced. We're trying to do that for the Navy, doing that for the other arms of, for the other services. It looks as though we are succeeding in getting Treasury to, agree, because they don't want to, sign money away without any condition, in fear that the money might get used for other purposes. So I think maybe when we meet with you next time, is to say you complained about obsolete equipment, and maybe we need to look at what is it that we should prioritize that would improve the capability of the hospital. And you also spoke about the fleet, the ambulances and so on. Maybe we should, maybe we need information as to what exactly that is, what cost will have to be paid for that, and so that we start now to look at certain projects that we can form a joint front with SecDef on your behalf, and so that we look at that. We're certainly not going to help you when it comes to the HR team. The numbers are 6,612. The budget is 3.7 billion rand. You keep within that, but the rest we can help you to fight the treasury on. Now, having said that, SecDef, there are things that they've just complained about, suboptimal supply chain management. That doesn't require treasury, doesn't require a lot of money to do, and maybe you can deal with that as well. Then after that, it will be minister and we close.
Maybe I can start with the issue you've just raised, Chair. I would follow up on those ones because I know that when I came, there were some of those contracts that I think from some they wanted to deal with them on a month-to-month basis, and we tried to resolve them. So these are normally handled at the level of the logistics environment. The person we have in the meeting from LOC deals with the facility. So let me give a commitment that I'll follow up on that one. The other thing, Chair, is that we have the 2 new hospitals that will come, and the challenge is that we're not going to, they will be commissioned, but we may not necessarily have staff. And I think that is also one of the challenges that is experienced by 2 mil. I'm not even going to venture to deal with the hardcore medical issues because I think those qualified to do so have done that. But I wanted to respond to the question posed by Honorable Ryder to the Minister of the unfunded organogram in defense. Now, what the normal situation is that you will be given a certain amount of money. So you have a post establishment that you are required to fill. And then once, so with the positions, they will say you have this position is funded. Ideally, you should have this position, but it is not funded. So normally, even when we fill those positions, we don't just fill them as a department, but we are required by policy that we liaise with the Department of Public Service and Admin. In actual fact, I think in most of the other departments as well, some of the posts have been downgraded, and we are still in engagement with them. I think the other, in the PCD, you were asking us about the DDG post, and we explained to you what is happening. So that is part of that. So the discussions are ongoing in terms of that. What I wanted to say, Chair, is that your request to us was to give you the challenges that we are faced with in providing these medical services, and then also patient load and cost of outsourcing. But what I also liked and I thought was good with the presentation is that in certain areas, they are beginning to also say, how can we actually deal with those ones? For instance, I think General Langa was also saying that there is the wish that we can decrease our outsourcing by 40%, which will be a whole host of money that we will be saving. In an ideal situation, Chair, I think it's fair to say that we would have been glad if we could be 100% self-sufficient. But in a financially constrained environment, that is not going to be possible. So I would have suggested to say that where they are making clear proposals in terms of how we can move forward, I know that the issues of PPE, public-private partnership, and then public-public partnership, and how we can work with others at provincial level. Let's go comb through the presentation, take all those ones out and say, if we were to move and start to implement and see how we deal with that, probably we may not find ourselves in an ideal situation where we are able to say outrightly we are able to do away with the outsourcing, or outrightly we are able to do the following, but we should be able to draw a picture of how we'll be scaling down on those ones. So I would rather appreciate an opportunity where we go back and say, where the presentation starts to say, these are the possible solutions we may have, revisit them and try to then say what constitutes a priority in all those areas that they have singled out. Then we can be able to then also quantify in terms of rents and sales. Because even for me, where I'm sitting as the department, then we are able to say, where do we take money? Where do we put money? Where is the highest priority where we deal with that? And part of the things is that it becomes very difficult to deal with rotation. I mean, I think it was even mentioned that if you take the army, they do rotation, people will go, come back, they are trained, and then after a year or two, then they get deployed. And SAMHS does not have that luxury. And that's why now we deal with these issues of overtime. And even that in itself is not sufficient, because as per DPSA, we are only allowed to pay up to 30% of overtime. And the rest we must apply to them to give us permission to pay what is over and above the threshold of 30%, which in itself is a little bit difficult, particularly in the areas where we have a deployment. And they can also sit and say, because I've reached a 30% threshold, I'm not going to do anything if you are actually deployed. So for me, that would be my plea, Chair, to say, maybe let's go back, comb through this presentation and see what we think we can decipher from that and determine a way forward on that. And from there, we will then take it within the department to say, where do we get the resources, at least based on priority of things that we think we can fund. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, your concluding remarks.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Minister.
Chair, you started off taking us back into the history of the budget.
I know you know it very well because you were a chair of the committee.
Yes, I started off in '98 as the deputy chair. and then took over since up to the 2004. I was chairperson of all those committees. So now, if we want to go back to the big bulge, we will lose ourselves because those were specific. The bulge was caused by the special packages, if you remember. Now, the medical services has always been the smallest of the four components. And perhaps we should actually be saying to the chief SAMHS that all the other arms of services have been able to sit us down, those of us who are newcomers here, and take us through their plans. These are the problems. This is what we think. This is what is affordable. These are the challenges. This is what we can do on our own. This is where we need help. I'm hoping that you have a plan like that, and that plan has been discussed with your chief, and that sooner or later we will be favored with that. Because until and unless, chairperson, me and the deputy minister and the hierarchy, SecDef, and the hierarchy of the defense have sat down and looked at this, it is impossible for some of us to be able to come out and say, no, we understand what is happening there. I understand a lot about 1 mil because, as I say, I have been there. But if we're not going to be favored with a plan that has gone through the hoops of being approved, even at the highest level of the defense before it comes to us in the ministry and in the department, we can talk until the cows come home. So I'm simply saying a complaint session is good, but sometimes we must look at it. The inefficiencies of the supply chain, to tell you the truth, it is riddled throughout all the arms of services. The supply chain within SAMHS, it can't be outsourced to the other arms. If there are problems there, then we should know, because 10 to 1, it will be not be a member of the secretariat, the civilian secretariat who's responsible for that. So we must always take responsibility too. But I have noted that we must look at that matter. It means throughout all the arms of services, we've got the same malice of supply chain. The truth of the matter is that in the SAMHS, we would expect to have a little bit of more professionalism and focus in, because they are focused in their professionals, different in health. So I would say that that plan must come to us. We must see the plan. We must be intimate with the plan. We must be able to come to the committee together with SAMHS and defend the plan. We must be able to sit down with Treasury and defend the plan. But that plan has to be very spot on, because the mess that happened at 1 mil is at the instance of SAMHS itself. You can't run an institution, take your eyes off, blame everybody else, because I am not sure what happened at that time when the people are put together to replenish and refurbish. We can never say that we put all the blame on public works. I refuse to do that, Chair. We take the blame. I take the blame, even though I was not there, because that is what leadership is all about. So I would say that we'd look at the plan that Ntate Maphaya has. We will look at how we approach the financings thereof. We will also look at the ongoing inefficiencies and see how we help. As I said, Min, I am saying that you are not losing out on expertise. They still have the best of specialists in this country. It is how we are going to ensure that we can make sure that they work. But they also do have some of the interesting problems. And sometimes the inability for some of us who are not professional medicals to understand where they are going at. I do not understand the story of the 260 million, Chair, and its availability and so on and so forth. I would be so happy if one of them who knows about it can put me on par, because it is going to be something that the defense will carry on. So if I have my own information that I keep and somebody comes in, instead of leveling up and saying, these were the issues, this is how we resolved, this is not how we want to go back to the past, but we want to move on, I would be happy to be put on it. In other words, I am saying plain and simple. What I do know of this service is what I'm picking up on my own. I have not been briefed. And therefore, I want to undertake to have people coming in and people putting me through and not allowing me to deal on issues of SAMHS on a crisis basis. Because if that continues, then I refuse absolutely to be blamed on to whatever is happening there. And I'm one of the fools that this country has produced who takes responsibility for whatever it is that I've been put responsible for. I'd like to take that responsibility for SAMHS, but I'm unable to until they recognize that the minister, their previous minister has gone. I am here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. That is the plan that we would love shared with us when it's drafted. Maybe the plan itself will review the organogram of SAMHS and indicate what exactly is affordable, or a structure that meet its operational requirement, not now in year 20,000. It's now 22 years later, but in 2022. So we look at that. And also spoke of technology being as a force multiplier. I'm sure the solutions are there. When you raise the issue of technology, I'm sure you have some solution in your mind. The plan must also, speak to that, because I love the ones of a maximum impact on that. If we engaged on this one, it will reduce 100 million rand per annum. That's a drainage, essentially. So let's look at that. Through a successful plan, we indeed can effect some savings that will come back that will then be utilized to beef up certain capabilities within the hospital. With that, we thank you, Minister, and thank you, SecDef and the team. The DM had had asked me to convey his apologies if that had not happened. So I'm doing that. He was on the aircraft from, I think, to Johannesburg or something. All right, Minister, thank you very much. So we and the SG and the team, you are free to leave. But with the colleagues, we still have to deal with two items. Thank you so much, colleagues. Two items, 2BRR. And there was a request, SecDef, before you ran away. SG, are you still there? Or Brigadier General Maso, are you still there? There was
yes,
a request that
I was just about to leave.
Yes, please. The presentation that was presented today is different from the presentation that was circulated to us. Can you talk to the SG to send us that presentation as well?
Chairperson, I'm still around. We will.
Yes.
Yeah, we will make sure that you get the right presentation.
The right presentation. No, thank you so much, SG.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good night. All right, colleagues, can we quickly move to the next item, the two BRR. Dr. Jens van Rensburg, over to you, sir.
Chair, if I may, actually, there's a set of minutes for the Joint Standing Committee of Defence that also needs to be adopted quickly. It's just one set, and perhaps then we should move to the officially finish with the work of the Joint Standing Committee of Defence, and then move officially to the work of portfolio.
Oh, okay. 2 sets of minutes, eh?
Just one, Chair.
Just one. I think we can postpone that one. Are you ready with it? Are you ready with the sets?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay, just one set. Let's quickly go through it and dispose it off, and then close the JSC meeting, and then start a brief meeting of the Portfolio Committee on Defence. This is the attendance. Right, continue. Colleagues, are you still together on the attendance? Are there any corrections? Continue. Finish the page, Doc. Page 3, any correction, colleagues? Page 4, any corrections?
Chairperson, this officials, the staff of us take all the fun away. They make no mistakes.
Oh, you mean yes? No. I really love the team. Colleagues, we are now at the end of the minutes, towards the end. Thank you very much. Colleagues, are there any corrections? If
I
none, proposes that we moves the minutes.
A second, Honorable Chairperson.
Martha adopts. Okay, so that concludes the thing. And so, are we done with the agenda of the Joint Standing Committee?
Yes, Chair. We've officially come to the end of the joint.
Okay. No, not chasing them away. I'm sure they have an interest in matters that we are filing in the PRRR for particular, and but they're not forced to stay behind. We're now converting the meeting into a portfolio committee meeting.
Arieng.
Come again? All right, sure. Okay.
Good night.
Good night, say. All right, colleagues. Let's quickly. Thank you. Let's quickly go through these two PRRRs. All right.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. I'll go first with the PRRR of the Department of Military Veterans. Chair, can you hear me? And is the presentation clear?
Yep. Can see it, can hear you.
Yes. No, Chair, thank you. There on the first page is just the description of the core functions of the department, the mandate of the committee, the purpose of the PRRR, the methodology utilized, the date of the oversight. Members will remember in April on a Friday, we had a visit to the headquarters of the Department of Military Veterans. And the next section, it just deals with the information used to compile the report from the NDP, the E&E, the SONA. The next section deals with the structure of the report. And then we're looking at the overview of the key relevant policy focus areas like the State of the Nation address, the various contributions to the NDP and the MTSF, and the various issues covered there. And these issues, Chair, were all covered by the department themselves or in the analysis that we did on the annual report of the Department of Military Veterans. That section just deals with the vision and the mission and the values of the department, a brief discussion on the strategic plan, the APP, and then last year's PRRR recommendations. Then, Chair, we start with the actual work of this year or the year under review, and we first look there at the budget allocation and expenditure for the past or the year under review, and saying that during this financial year, the allocation for this vote 26 in the E&E was 6.54 million, which was later adjusted downwards to 607.4 million. And the department then managed to spend 515.5 million, which is 78.9% of the main appropriation, or 84.9% against the adjusted allocation. And just noting there that this was basically an underspending of 91.7 against the adjusted budget. There, Chair, is just the figures as we've outlined them. We then refer to the quarterly spending patterns. And there, this section is just the performance of the department. And I think, Chair, maybe I should just pause here. There we note from the financial year 2019 to 20, and the next year, financial year 2020 to 21, and then for the financial year under review. Firstly, the targets that were set were 19. They've achieved 9, 10 were not. And it means that there's a success rate in achieving the targets of 47%, and they use 85% of the budget to do this. And here then next, we just go over to the specific 3 programs. First, we look at the budget allocation of the first program, administration. And then we know there that this program actually did fairly well. They achieved about 80% of the targets, and that was with an expenditure of 90% of the budget. And there we just note the specific target that has not been achieved. Program 2, socioeconomic support. This is the worst performing program of the DMV, and their members can see that in the previous, or the 2020-21 financial year, they had 6 targets, they have achieved 2, and 4 were not achieved. For the year under review, they had 8 targets, only 2 was achieved. So it means they only achieved 25% of the target against a spending of 77% of their budget. And then we just list the various targets that have not been achieved. The next one is the program 3, ESM, and there we can see this program has actually improved against the previous year's performance. Like this year or the year under review, they had 6 targets and they achieved 3 of that. So this give them a success rate of 50%, and that was at the expenditure of 94% of their budget. And then we just list those. And the next, we just refer to the financial statements, first stating that there were no unauthorized expenditure during the year under review. And then the fruitless, wasteful, and irregular expenditure was around 91,000 Rand. And then we raised the concerns also around the contingent liabilities and contingent assets. And members will recall, they've reported that the Zeal case has actually been sorted out in court, and that 198 million Rand is no more due to that Zeal company. And then, Chair, we just list the findings of the auditor, and members are quite aware of these, given that we've discussed it with the AGA as well as department when they presented their annual report. We just noted the issues of governance there as well. And then if we look at the human resources, I think the one concern here is the vacancy rate, overall of 24%, and then very concerning, and the worst performing program, that is program 2, the vacancy rate of 30%. And given that this program is also responsible for disbursement of 8 of the 11 benefits, this is very concerning. Chair, the next thing, we just talk about the misconduct and disciplinary hearings, performance agreements, and rewards and suspensions. And there we noted there were about 29 grievances, and only 8 of them were resolved. And then one of the 21 SMS members did not conclude or sign the performance agreement. And then also we just briefly refer to the 4 members that have been suspended, and they've been suspended at that time for a period of 165 average days is a cost of 3.7 million Rand. So, and then the important part, it is the observations of the committee with regards to the Department of Military Veterans. Firstly, we're stating there that one of the main observations of the committee is a serious concern about the continuing poor performance and underspending of the department. The department spent 78.9% of their main appropriation, or 84.9% against the adjusted allocation, and only achieved 47%, or 9 out of the 19 performance targets for the year. Against this background, it can be questioned whether the department delivers value for money and whether the persistent poor performance and underspending will not bring existential questions to the fore. B, the committee was again critical on the slow progress to fill vacancies, especially senior posts, which was further exacerbated by the suspension of 4 senior officials, given the interrelatedness between the number of vacancies and the kind of service delivery. C, committee members commented on the lack of progress to pay pensions to military veterans against the background that the undertaking was given that would start to roll out this benefit from the 1st of April 2020. The absence of an audit committee report in the annual report due to resignations and the subsequent inactivity of this committee was lamented by the PC, who stressed the importance of this entity as an early warning system. Similarly, the committee expresses concern that the appeal board has not been appointed, even though the committee has previously implored the department to expedite this appointment, given its important role to serve as an arbiter in cases concerning military veterans. While welcoming the court's decision in favor of the department in the Zeal case, which related to a claim of 198 million, the committee inquired why it took 8 years to conclude this contingent liability case. The committee, however, remained concerned about the contingent liabilities and contingent assets. G, the department indicated that 19 military veterans were registered under the Department of Employment and Labor's database for employment opportunities, but members wanted to know whether this has actually translated into employment. And H, the committee inquired whether municipalities could not be approached for assistance in the case where the verification panel could not locate military veterans. This, against the background of the intergovernmental framework, and because ward councillors can also assist in this regard. And I, it was requested the department provide a committee with the numbers of applications by military veterans which were not responded to within the legislated 30 days. This was based on the numerous complaints received by members of parliament from military veterans about the lack of responses from the department. And J, the committee noted with concern the difference in opinion between the Deputy Minister and Director General. Next one, the committee asked for information about the investigation by the Hawks and the SIU into allegations of non-compliance with procurement and contract management. It was noted with concern that the DMV did not know why these investigations were instituted and who requested. Related to the observation, Chair, is then the recommendations. Saying there, firstly, the committee recommends that the DMV should urgently address the following issues to assist the department to address its perennial underspending and poor performance: the high rate of vacancies, especially at senior management level, the suspension of especially the 4 senior officials, the internal audit capacitation and functioning, the appointment of the audit committee, and the finalizing of the DMV database. Next, the committee emphasized that the budget is linked to performance targets, and thus, if there is poor performance, it has a direct bearing on how effective the department is. Therefore, the DMV should prioritize addressing the continued poor delivery of benefits. C, the committee recommends quarterly feedback on the progress of the payment of pensions to military veterans, as very clear, legitimate expectations were created by the department in conjunction with the Presidential Task Team on Military Veterans. D, it is recommended that the audit committee be appointed as a matter of urgency, and the department should report on progress in this regard at the next meeting of the department with the PC. E, the committee recommends that the progress report on the appointment of the appeal board and its members be provided at the next meeting, given the importance of this entity to address complaints by military veterans. And then F, the committee recommends that the department should seriously engage with the contingent liabilities and assets and the risk that it poses, and not just view it as something that are unlikely to come to pass. G, the department should go one step further than just registering military veterans on the Department of the Employment and Labor's database, but should actively try and assist them to source employment. Next one, the committee recommends that municipalities should be approached for assistance in the case where the verification panel cannot locate military veterans, as it is not enough to simply say that they cannot be located when all avenues have not been explored. And then I, the committee recommends that the department should provide with a number of applications by military veterans who were not responded to within the legislated 30 days at its next meeting. And then J, the committee recommends that a difference in opinion between a deputy minister and a director general be resolved as soon as possible to ensure seamless cooperation between the two offices, as well as to enhance the department's delivery capabilities. The minister or the deputy minister are requested to report back to the committee in this regard before the end of 2022. The last one, Chair. The committee wants the department to present it with more information about the investigations by the Hawks and the SIU into allegations of non-compliance with procurement and contract management. This information should be provided in writing no later than 15 December 22. Thank you, Chair. That is the presentation.
You are done.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. And colleagues, do you have any comment on this report? I don't see the hands.
Yeah, Chairperson.
Yes, sir. Mr. Sheldon.
No, Chairperson. Yeah, no, Chairperson. Thank you very, very much for the well prepared report, and it's very, very comprehensive. And on my side, it is reflecting truly what we commented on. And yeah, so I must say, should the department look to these things, I think the challenges that are being faced by our military veterans will be addressed if the department will adhere and ensure. I'm happy, Chairperson. That's what I want to say with that report. Thank you.
Excellent report from my side as well,
Any
sir. Excellent report.
Comment?
Just an excellent report, sir. Excellent report. Well done. Thank you, Peter.
So Mr. Shelembe was moving. Thank you so much. Mr. Shelembe was moving the report for adoption, seconded by?
I second.
Can I get a seconder?
Mr. Mafanya seconds.
Mr. Mafanya, second. Thank you very much. So the report, thank you. The report is adopted. I now move for ask for the second report. CCP and Castleport.
Chair, thank you. Is it visible on your side?
Yes, it is.
All right, Chair. I will go through the first part quickly that relates to Armscor, and then Peter will take members through the second part. So this report, it just speaks to the two defense entities, Armscor and the Castle Control Board. So the report is split into two parts. The first part, Part A, dealing with the Armscor Control Board. And here we looked at how aspects of Armscor relates to the State of the Nation address, how it fits in with the National Development Plan, and with the medium-term strategic framework as well. We also highlighted last year's PRR recommendations. Suffice to say, some of the recommendations again looked at midlife upgrades for the SA Navy and issues around Project Hoefyster that is managed by Armscor. Coming to the year under review, 2021-22, looking at Armscor's performance, the report here, as members will recall, during the annual report presentations as well, looks at acquisitions, specifically acquisitions around the Project Hotel, Project Biro, the short-range air missiles, which is a concern at this stage, Project Hoefyster, which is well overdue, the ground-based air defense system, and tactical communication systems. There's also some information from their side on defense industrial participation and disposal, as well as research and development. Coming to research and development, these are some of the key activities that we note here during the year from Armscor at their various facilities like Alcanpan, Hazmat, Gerotech, Protechnic Laboratories, Flamengo, IMT, and of course, lastly, the Armscor Dockyard, which is responsible for the servicing of the SA Navy vessels. We also listed the various progress they've made on the various vessels in terms of maintenance. Lastly, or second from last, looking at human capital, this maybe just to reiterate what was discussed, that there is a decrease in the staff complement at Armscor. And then the performance overview. In this, there's a number of targets they set for themselves, and in this graph here, we only highlighted the targets that they did not achieve, as these are focus areas for improvement in the future. Also looking at their financial statements, the income of the group continued to decrease. As you members can see, there is still a surplus, but the surplus is decreasing significantly over the recent years. In terms of their expenditure, we highlighted fruitless, wasteful, and irregular expenditure here. Irregular expenditure of 6.5 million rand was noted during the year under review. However, they did receive an unqualified audit from the Auditor General. So given that background, Chair and members, coming to the observations that emanated from the discussions on the 12th of October, firstly, the committee expressed concern around the decline in commercial services revenue at Armscor. Secondly, the committee requested further information on the revenue from individual commercial activities at the various Armscor facilities, such as Hazmat, Alcantan, Protecnic, and IMT. Members just wanted to know what the contribution of each of those individual parts of Armscor were. Third, members request information on the latest developments in relation to the midlife upgrades of the SA Navy frigates. Armscor noted that there are 2 acquisition projects for midlife upgrades, but they were stopped due to lack of funds, as members are well aware. Some progress has since been made, and there's a plan going forward for the Navy to prioritize some upgrades from existing funding. Number D, members noted the poor performance of the SA Air Force in terms of flying hours, and that this was largely due to maintenance constraints. The observation should be read together with the presentation to the Joint Standing Committee on Defence, where Armscor indicated to Parliament that only 45 of the Air Force's aircraft were serviceable. During the annual report engagements, Armscor stated that while this was the case in 2021-22, all maintenance contracts have since been put in place for all aircraft, except for Hawks, which were in the process of being finalized. Armscor also noted that contracts with the NEL are in place for the maintenance of the C-130 transport aircraft and the Oryx helicopter fleet. Fifth, the members expressed their satisfaction with the progress on projects Byro and Hotel, but noted slight delays in the finalization of Project Hotel due to external factors affecting the supplier in Durban. For example, the flooding affected the progress there. The next one is that the committee expressed concern around the provision of the A-Darter missile to the SA Air Force by Denel Dynamics. Armscor noted that many key skilled personnel left Denel. To revive this program, these personnel and their current employers will have to be approached. The strategy going forward envisages the involvement of the local defense industry. The committee then again expressed the need for progress and decision-making on Project Hoefyster. Armscor noted that a way forward has been agreed upon by all stakeholders, and this will limit financial losses. The future of phase 1 of the project will depend on the DoD Project Control Board, which is to convened in November of this year, that must accede to the relaxation of some conditions. So there has been progress, but it's not the final way forward is still to be determined. The committee welcomed Armscor's unqualified audit opinion. Members noted that Armscor remained largely reliant on government funding and observed the need for the entity to engage other institutions to increase revenue. Armscor indicated that there are memoranda of understanding in place with a number of government departments and state-owned companies. Second from last, members also expressed concern around the sustainability of second-tier defense suppliers and how they are affected by the situation at NEL. Armscor then confirmed that this view and noted that the NEL subcontractors or subcontracts to a number of smaller companies, including for Project Hoefyster, which had more than 200 suppliers. Lastly, the committee expressed the need for consequence management to be implemented in cases of fruitless, wasteful, and irregular expenditure. Taking then, Chair and members, taking these observations into the recommendations, following recommendations are made to the Minister of Defence and the Arms Corps Board. Firstly, Arms Corps is urged to intensify its commercialization strategy as a means to limit the impact of decreasing defence funding allocations. Similarly, better cooperation with other government departments are encouraged to ensure that the services of Arms Corps are more widely recognized and used. Second recommendation, the committee recommends ongoing engagement between Arms Corps, the DoD and National Treasury on the funding of the midlife upgrades of the SA Navy frigates and submarines. And this recommendation, members will recall, as we discussed yesterday, is also contained in the recommendations to the Minister of Finance. Next, the DoD, Arms Corps, NEL, and National Treasury are urged to address the need for improved landward defense technology, notably the SA Army Infantry formation. A way forward on phase 2 of Project Hoefyster is required, or in lieu thereof, a way forward on the upgrading of the current Ratel fleet is required. And a similar recommendation was made to the Minister of Finance for engagement between these number of parties. The next one, the committee welcomes the fact that maintenance contracts have been put in place for all SA Air Force aircraft platforms. The Minister of Defence and Arms Corps Board should, in future, ensure that such contracts are negotiated and renewed well in advance of its expiry date. The fifth recommendation is the committee recommends the development of an urgent plan of action for the A-Darter missile system, its further production and delivery to the SA Air Force. This is of particular concern given the statement that the current missiles in use by the Air Force is nearing the end of its operational life. Members should then note that a similar recommendation was made in the previous year, but little progress has been made. So there's a very important aspect to follow up on. Next is the Minister and Arms Corps Board should ensure that adequate consequence management is in place. The committee recommends that consequence management should be implemented on the most recent cases of irregular, unauthorized, and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And then they should work backwards to older cases. This will ensure that members are held to account before leaving the entity and serve as a deterrent against future such cases. And the last recommendation, Arms Corps and the DoD are encouraged to ensure that they work together to ensure that funding is availed for the upgrading of Arms Corps technologies required for the entity to remain globally competitive. And then we also have a separate section just to make it easier for the committee to track in terms of reporting requirements. There's 5 of them. First, the Arms Corps should report on the progress made in relation to phase 1 of Project Hoefyster and the decisions taken by the DoD Project Control Board on the future of the project by 1 February of next year. Since they will be convening in November, this should be a safe date for good feedback. Second, Arms Corps should report the revenue from individual commercial activities at the various Arms Corps facilities by 1 February as well. And this should be included in future annual reports. Third, Arms Corps should report on an action plan around the further development of the A-Darter missile system in their 2023-24 annual performance plan. Should a feasible plan not be in place, Arms Corps should indicate contingency plans to address the aging SA Air Force fighter missile stockpile. Fourth one, Arms Corps should provide biannual reports on the implementation of consequence management. The first such report should be submitted to the committee no later than 1 May of next year. And next, the last one is the committee notes that Arms Corps managed maintenance and support contracts worth 3.9 billion rand in the year under review. Arms Corps should provide a high-level breakdown of spending on these contracts as it relates to operational equipment of the SANDF before 15 December 2022. Chair, members, those are the observations and recommendations. I'll hand back to you if there's any.
This is the BRRR on Arms Corps. Mr. Mara, I see your hand.
Yeah, Chairperson, just one very simple correction, if I may, Willem. Under committee recommendations, it says A, B, C, D, A, and F. That A must be a, so it must be E, F, G, so that A must become an F and the F must become a G. Oh, you've corrected that, eh? Chairperson, then the other issue that the only thing that I am missing is where we have, in terms of the committee observations, where it was referred to the C-130 aircraft, the Oryx helicopter fleet, and you will recall that I always include the Rayfalk as well, because that is also the responsibility of Denel. So Denel has got that three that they are the OEM of. So I was just wondering, because I don't see any mentioning of the Rayfalk and the maintenance contracts and that of the Rayfalk. So I was just, that if we can include that. Then in terms of the reporting requirement, I was wondering whether we can ask them to report back on the maintenance of specifically the Rayfalk, the Oryx, and the C-130, given that they are our procurement agent, and they must be liaise with Denel on that. And also, you'll recall that we have talked about the need for improvement of those three platforms as well. Then the other thing that I have just missed, I know that they have reported back on the Amatola that is now been taken in or the Amatola that was supposed to be, and it has subsequently been reintroduced into service. But we have got 3 or 4 frigates that they have indicated, and you will recall maybe more specifically also it's important because yesterday it was mentioned that we will get some money over the medium term specifically for the Navy for that purposes. Whether they can give us just report backs on the rest of the frigates and the rest of the submarines as well. That we can just from time to time get what is the status with the other frigates, what is the status with the other submarines, and how are they progressing with the maintenance on that.
Okay.
That is all that I can pick up, sir. Thank you.
Please bring that in. Okay. Any other comment?
If not, then I propose for the acceptance.
Mr. Mare proposed for the acceptance, seconded by?
I second, Honorable Chair.
Honorable Alice Mtembu, seconds. Thank you very much, colleague. And then let's quickly move to the last one.
Thank you, Chair. Is it visible?
It is visible.
Thank you, Chair. And members, this is part B, the castle control board, just describing there, firstly, the functions of the castle, of the CCB, reference to the station of sonar of 2021, their contribution to the NDP, the summary of the previous financial year's BRRR recommendations, their strategic outcome-orientated goals, the highlights mentioned by the chairperson and the CEO, as well as the challenges. And then from 5 onwards is the overview and assessment of the financial performance of the CCB. And that is followed by just the income and estimates of the income, the revenue. Next 5.2, we just discussed the financial statements. And there were no fruitless and wasteful expenditures. We then had a look at the findings of the Auditor General. And then we expressed the view there on the going concern challenges at the castle and their responsible revenue generation plan. Next, we discussed the overview and assessment of the program performance. First, we just look at the non-financial performance. And then we went into the various programs and noting their program 1 administration. They've met all their targets there. Program 2, they've met 3 of the 4 targets. Program 3, 5 of the 6 targets. And then program 4, all targets were met. And then we just referred there to the governance, and that they have a risk management register, and those are covered. Briefly referring to fraud and corruption, stating there that they have a fully fledged fraud prevention policy that addresses criminality. Then we looked at human resources, saying there that traditionally the human resources component has been the Achilles heel and the strength. And then with regards to performance rewards and staff members, firstly stating there that no performance rewards had been paid to them in the financial year 2021-2022. And then, Chair, importantly, there from that page, section 9, we then start with the observations by the committee. Firstly, we state that the committee commended the CCB on achieving a consecutive clean audit outcome from the Auditor General. That they are improving the performance of the impact of the COVID pandemic, and also thank the DoD for the relief fund and availability of artisans from the regional works regimen. Secondly, it was observed that the pristine condition of the castle is appreciated to the continued repair and maintenance to preserve this 367-year-old building. And then C, while noting the 8 contract workers from a cleaning company that have been appointed on a contract basis, the committee expressed the hope that the entity will continue to secure employment for these workers. Similar sentiments were expressed then regarding the utilization of the 7 interns. And D, questions were asked around the working relationship and communication with the DoD and whether any challenges are being experienced in this regard. They indicated that as with the regional works regiment, the Army support base as well as the relevant reserve units are very helpful, and the support allows for the effective functioning of the castle. And E, the committee raises concern around the number of vacancies and especially the reasons why managers left the employment of the CCB. It wanted to know whether there were certain environmental factors why these managers left, and if yes, how they plan to address these in order to retain personnel. If a question was raised on the visitor numbers which were undermined, but at around 33,000, it is still way off the 120,000 benchmarks, and how the CCB foresee they will address this. The response was that this item is high on the agenda and they are looking at increasing spending in this regard from only 5,000 Rand to around 100,000 Rand. And G, it was noted that the CCB has previously stated its intention to deal with its going concern challenges, and that the Auditor General has previously stated that due to financial assistance of the DoD, the entity could prepare its financial statements on the going concern basis. Chair, and then importantly and concluding are the recommendations linked to the observations, and firstly stating there that the committee expressed expectation that the CCB should continue to receive a clean audit opinion and reiterated its stance that it expects such a small entity to perform well during its auditing processes. Next, the committee recommends that the DoD continue to second regional works regiment artisans to the CCB as they are making a substantial contribution to the maintenance and repair of this 367-year-old building. And C, the committee encourages the CCB to continue to create employment opportunities for both contract workers and interns to assist with addressing the huge challenge of unemployment in the country. And indeed, the committee commended all DoD role players for its support to the CCB and encouraged them to continue to support the CCB. The committee recommends that the CCB provides it with the reasons why some managers left, whether it was due to environmental factors and whether it has a retention strategy to ensure the continued employment of its personnel. And then if the committee recommends that the CCB enhances efforts to increase the number of visitors to pre-COVID levels and agreed that the increased spending on this item should assist in this regard. And lastly, noting the going concern challenges have been exacerbated by the pandemic, the committee recommends that the CCB should inter alia explore the full utilization of all facilities at the castle to enhance its sustainability and revenue generating capabilities. Thank you, Chair. That is the CCB's observations and recommendations, Chair.
Colleagues, thank you very much. I'm happy with the work of this team. Are there any comments, colleagues? It doesn't look like there's any comment. Can I get a mover?
I move, Chair.
Oh, oh, Kenny. Yeah, Kenny has moved. Can I get Motsomai? Right. Both Kenny and Maliake Shelebe have moved. Can I get a seconder?
I am Sarel Mutamai, Lina Gatamai. Gatamai, I second him.
You second.
Chair.
Can I get another seconder?
Chair, I'm seconding, but I'm a bit confused.
No, I hear you.
Oh, all right. No, it's fine. As long as you understand. Okay.
No, I understand. So both Kenny and Maliak have moved and you have seconded. So the document is accepted.
Oh.
Chair, you've got two proposals. Do you need two seconders as well?
Well, no, remember, it's a portfolio committee report.
I'm just joking because you take both of them as proposers, but you only have got one seconder.
The other proposer is underground.
The other one is underground.
No,
Okay,
actually,
colleagues,
Motamai moved.
Yeah,
Motamai is the mover.
Yeah, no, colleagues, we've done the job. I'm sorry that I've detained you beyond 9 o'clock. It's 26 minutes past. I really thank you. I really thank you. I like the collegiality, and the team is supporting us very well. You see, I really can't expect anything better than this. Colleagues, with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.